Все, уважаемые гости и участники.
Okay, dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm very happy to welcome you all. A very warm welcome to the International Online Conference on Cross-Border Interregional Cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region as a driver for the development of the Russian forest in the Asian Arctic. My name is Anna Andrei and Alexei, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Research Department representing the Hokkaido University of Economics and Law, who is the co-hosting this event. I will be also moderating this discussion. Our event is conducted together with the Khabarovsk State University of Economics and Law and the Arctic Research Center of Hokkaido University. Among co-organizers of the conference, we have the Human Resources Development Platform for Japan-Russia Economic Cooperation and Personnel Exchange Hub, as well as the Arctic Challenge for Sustainability 2 and the U-Arctic Thematic Network on Asian in the Arctic and Asia. The work of the conference will be structured among two key streams dedicated to the international interregional scientific cooperation in the Arctic, as well as the Arctic international and interregional business cooperation. Dear participants, I also would like to remind you that we're using the Zoom platform, and it is vital that you deactivate your microphone. Otherwise, it's very difficult to hear all of us. Thank you. So like I said, we are hosting this conference in two sections, and apart from the online audience and speakers, we are also having some face-to-face participation, and let me introduce them. Namely, the PhD in Engineering Science from the Khabarovsk University of Economics and Law, Anna Zhibo, the Head of Departments of International Relations at Khabarovsk University of Economics and Law, Tatiana Malovich, the Doctor of Engineering and the Professor of the Faculty of the Department of Railway Transport, Sergei Kudryavtsov, also the Head of International Relations of the Railway University, Svetlana Han, the Vice President of the Union of the Far Eastern Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Petr Yanchenko, and the lead expert of the International Relations of the Khabarovsk Federal Research Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Alexei Romanov. The third secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs representation in Khabarovsk, Mr. Belov, who will join us a little bit later. And with us, we also have the director of non-for-profit organization Chukotka Group of the Scientific Research Support, Mr. Zelensky, and also the representative of the Cooperation Center of the SCO and Asia Pacific region, and Konstantin Belinsky is also with us. I also would like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation available into Russian and English. Please use the channel for interpretation you need. Should you have any technical problems, please contact us in the chat and we will try to help you. I also would like to remind all the speakers that each one of you will have only 10 minutes for your presentation, and please make sure you stick to the time allocated. And I would like to give the floor to the next speaker that will be delivered by the Vice Rector for Scientific Work, Anna Zhibo. A very good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear participants of the conference. It is my pleasure to welcome you today, and we're very honored to be the co-organizers of this truly important event. Research in the Arctic represents a high interest as of today that particularly relates to the eastern part of the Russian Federation. As we all know, there is a very big potential for further research. A lot of things are not yet explored, and I believe at this conference we'll be able to discuss the most important and pressing issues that will give us a boost for further development. I'm particularly pleased that we have a lot of participants at this conference from various countries. That includes our partners that we've been cooperating with for many years, and I hope that in the future this international cooperation would evolve further. That is why today I am once again very happy to welcome you all, and I wish us all a very fruitful day, fruitful work, more scientific achievements in the future, and a very fruitful conference. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anna. Indeed, gradually as new technologies evolve, new changes are happening to our climate in the Arctic. We see more and more economic opportunities evolving. As a result, more and more countries are paying attention to the development of economic activities in the Arctic region. As a result, the circumpolar countries are very much interested in the development of their northern territories. However, it is important to bear the economic and environmental aspects in mind that impact the lives of the indigenous people. Therefore, the important issue in this regard is the international scientific cooperation in hard-to-reach regions like the Arctic regions. That is why I'd like to announce the first part of a conference that is focused on the opportunities and challenges of the international academic cooperation in the Eastern Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. And I'd like to give the floor to our first presenters who are going to talk about the experience and opportunities of Japanese-Russian academic cooperation in the city of the Arctic region. And that would be Juha Soonavaara, who is an assistant professor at the Arctic Research Center at Hokkaido University, and Marina Lamaeva. Marina, Juha, the floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Juha Soonavaara, and it's my great pleasure to give a speech focusing on academic cooperation between Japan and Russia in an Arctic and North-related issues in cooperation with my colleague Marina Lamaeva. Before starting, I would just like to remind everybody that you can write down your questions and comments to the chat box. Okay, and today's speech, it reflects our individual backgrounds and past experiences. Marina has acted as a facilitator and a bridge builder, and also as a researcher heavily involved in Russo-Japanese academic cooperation. I, on the other hand, I'm speaking as a scholar who has only relatively recently become more tightly involved in Japan-Russia cooperation, involving not only scholars, but various stakeholders interested in the development of the Arctic and North. But first, I would like to give the floor to Marina. So Marina, please, the floor is yours.
To unmute myself first. Okay. Hi, my name is Marina Lamaeva, and I work for Hokkaido University while simultaneously writing a PhD on a topic related to the North and the Far East. From September 2018 to September 2021, I was a university, industry, government partnership coordinator at the Human Resource Development Platform for Japan-Russia Economic Cooperation and Personal Exchange. We also call it HARP. The HARP project is an unprecedented undertaking of creating an all-Japan and all-Russia network of universities and their partner organizations for promoting Japan-Russia academic collaboration, particularly for educational purposes. The HARP project was funded by Japan's Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, MEXT, as part of the 2017 Inter-University Exchange Project. Hokkaido University, together with Niigata University, applied for this grant and proposed launching a platform that would support educational projects in the areas covered by 2016 Japan-Russia 8-point plan for economic cooperation. 8 corresponding specialized sections were established, which are in some ways similar to the EU Arctic thematic networks. With the legacy of the East Russia-Japan Expert Education Program, RG3 program, which Hokkaido University started in 2014, together with the Russian universities, with the 5 Russian universities situated in the Arctic and the Far East regions. Cooperation on the Arctic and North-related issues became one of the mainstays of the HARP project. Its importance is reflected in the fact that one of the specialized sections was subsequently reorganized into SDGs, environment, resource development, multicultural education, with a focus on the following areas of education and research-related cooperation: environmental monitoring in the Russian Far East and North, regional development, including resource development, social issues of local communities, including indigenous peoples. This specialized section gathered researchers with natural science and humanities backgrounds at Japanese universities and drew not only on the RG3 program network of contacts, but also on Hokkaido and Sapporo's sister region and sister city relations, along with Hokkaido's historical ties to the Northern Forum and Hokkaido Russia Interregional Cooperation Team, and Sapporo's leadership at World Winter City Association of Mayors. This Arctic and North focus also linked this specialized section to the activities of Hokkaido University Arctic Research Center and the ARCS and ARCS-2 projects. Next slide lists our main Russian partners in the Arctic and North-related fields. Our cooperation with them so far has taken the form of hosting numerous in-person, online, and hybrid events to which we invited them as speakers and commentators, offering short-term lecture courses and discussing possibilities of collaborating on mid to long-term projects involving business and government circles. The following slides illustrate the first pattern, the outlines of the cross-section events we have held so far. I will quickly show them to you before passing the floor to my colleague Juha.
Okay, and next, I would like to say a few words about recent activities and on my personal findings. It's worth noticing that these activities have taken place at a time when COVID-19 pandemic has challenged us all to reconsider and re-establish the ways we conduct cross-border cooperation. So starting from the beginning of 2021, we have organized 4 online events. And in this case, we refer to Hokkaido University Arctic Research Center and also HARP, Arctic Challenge for Sustainability 2 project, and U-Arctic thematic network on Asian in the Arctic in Asia. In addition to this, we have had different cooperating partners in different events. UIT, the Arctic University of Norway, Moscow State University, and so on, in different individual events that we can see here. And the geographical focus of different events, it has varied. Furthermore, the types of actors that we have concentrated on, be it national or regional governments or indigenous or non-indigenous communities in the Arctic and so on, they have varied between different events. And then this slide describes some of the themes, although there has been differences in the events, describes some of the themes and topics that have frequently appeared. So different types of settlements and cities, also different types of companies and industrial projects, and their relations with the sustainable development of the Arctic and North. Then we have talked about the past, previous slide, please. The past, present, and future of different forums and organizations supporting international and interregional cooperation in the Arctic and North. Then we have talked about the role and what would be the added value of cross-border interregional cooperation. And then again, obviously, we have also discussed about the challenges bound to the international and interregional cooperation in the Arctic and North. So the next slide describes my personal views and experiences concerning cooperation, especially between Japan and Russia in the Arctic and North related activities. I think the most important thing is that there is a will to cooperate, both between individual researchers, but also in universities, and then in the wider industry, academia, government cooperating framework. Second thing is that there are issues that both the Japanese and Russian researchers find interesting and important. Then there might be some issues and problems in project building. It has been relatively easy to, especially with the help of Hub staff, to organize workshops and seminars that introduce topical issues and help in networking and so on. However, the next step is often a bit more difficult to take. And in the academic world, this next step usually takes form in co-authored papers or applications for external funding and so on. We are going to that direction, but it has not been always easy, and it may take some time. And then education, COVID-19 forced us to adapt and open our eyes to the possibilities on online lecturing. In other words, the Russia-Japanese academic cooperation in the field of Arctic and North is not only about research, but it can also be about education. I have really positive experiences with lectures where I could explain themes of my own research, and I could also explain Japan's interest and involvement and engagement with the Arctic to Russian university students thousands of kilometers away, even without leaving my own home. So these are my personal views, and then I'd like to give the floor back to Marina.
Mm-hmm. A few concluding remarks based on my personal experience of the HARP and Northern Arctic related activities involving Japanese and Russian stakeholders. First, in general, Russian scholars show greater interest in cooperation with Japanese partners than the other way around. Partly, this may also be related to a more positive image of Japan in Russia than Russia in Japan, in mass media, etc. Second point, the same may be said about students. Russian students are generally keener on participating in various events in different capacities, including volunteering and searching for opportunities or studying abroad. The main reason may be differences in the recruitment, employment practices, which students need to take into account when planning their future careers. Third, on the technical side, the widespread use of messengers for communication in Russia greatly facilitates communication with the stakeholders, including the top administration, who are in general easier to approach than their Japanese counterparts. Fourth, one of the biggest challenges in Japan-Russia collaborations have been different time frames in planning. As a rule, the Russian side has to plan in a shorter time frame and be prepared for high risks or sudden changes than the Japanese side. Another major challenge is a difference in a degree of individuals' leeway in making new contacts and initiating discussions of prospective collaborations. Usually it is higher in Russia than in Japan. On the other hand, in Japan, reputational risks associated with sudden cancellations are much higher, and risk management and backup planning are more advanced. And it is always easier for both the Japanese and the Russian side to start a new project within the framework or as an offshoot of the currently running one, particularly when there is a chance of enlisting some of the current participants. Therefore, a careful study of the past and present projects would greatly simplify launching a new one. Okay. My final remark concerns our research activities' relevance to the wider society. Both you and I are strong proponents of cooperation with the industry and government, and draw on it in designing projects that involve Japan and Russia. Despite the numerous challenges, we continuously promote such projects and would like to introduce one of our ongoing projects on the sustainable cruise industry in the Pacific Arctic as an example where the information needs of the industry and local communities may be satisfied by the research that is scientifically relevant and topical. This project group is organizing a workshop at the beginning of December, and we would like to invite you all to participate. Unfortunately, the exact dates have not yet been decided, but we will keep you informed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Марина и Юха, за ваш интересный и познавательный доклад.
Thank you, Marina and Juha, for your interesting and informative presentation.
Я бы хотел также напомнить, Юха, в двух
I
словах.
would like to remind you, and you have mentioned that, each guest or participant of today's conference can ask a question to any of the speakers. To do this, you need to log in to the conference chat in Zoom and post your question there, and mention your addressee and place your question there. At the end of each of the session, we will have some separate time for Q&A. If you do not have time to give you the floor, we will send it in writing to the speaker, and then we will make the mailing. So the next report will be devoted to the cooperation in Arctic, and the floor goes to the head of the Department for International Cooperation, Office of the Government and the Government of the Chukotka, and the Engineering University and Associate Professor of the Institute of Economics and Management, Professor Gao Tianmin, please. Good afternoon. I hope that you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you well, loud and clear. Thank you very much. And yes, we are waiting for your presentation, Professor. Let's just a sec. There's some challenge with the sharing of the presentation there.
Почему-то вы видите презентацию?
Can you see my presentation? No. We actually had a glimpse of that just a sec ago.
Еще раз.
На окно презентации перейдите.
Maybe you can switch to the sharing option.
Я уже включил, но почему-то на экране не
Well, I
Давайте я
also activated sharing. Unfortunately, it cannot be seen on screen. Perhaps I should start. Professor Gao, just choose the presentation there down below. On the control panel, please, instead of the Zoom application, choose the PowerPoint. There you are. We are okay. Very well, very well. Thank you, Will. Thank you. And sorry for such technical challenges. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I welcome all the participants of the conference. My name is Gao Tianmin, and I'm the Director and Chief Expert of the Center for Arctic Economy Research at Harbin Engineering University. I thank the esteemed organizers for the invitation to speak and share our vision of the promising areas for the Russian-Chinese research and technological cooperation in the Arctic. China's Arctic policy emphasizes that Chinese capital, technology, knowledge, and experience will play an important role in the expansion of the network of sea routes in the Arctic, as well as the socio-economic developments of the Arctic countries and territories. At the same time, China focuses on strengthening cooperation on environmental management in the northern territories, developments of the green energy, advanced research in the environmental development of biological and mineral resources, and management of Arctic ecosystems. China's Arctic strategy provides a broad list of multidisciplinary Arctic research areas that are priorities for the country, including geology, geography, hydrology, meteorology, biology, ecology, geophysics, marine chemistry, and CI studies. Also promising for China are the studies of available natural resources and opportunities for the developments, conducting exploration operations and improving the developments of resources in the heart of access areas of the Arctic zone, including on the shelf, as well as research and evaluation of opportunities for the cargo shipments in the Arctic ocean waters. The research priorities of Russia and China in the Arctic overlap in many ways. For Russia, the main task in the development of polar sciences and technology are the development and implementation of technologies that are crucial for the development of the Arctic, as well as the expansion of research activities on natural and man-made
Sorry, my interruption.
hazards.
Could you change the slide? The speaker, for the speaker.
При предотвращении повреждения элементов.
Professor Gao, can you change the slides, please? We only see the first slide. Maybe you can proceed with the slide show. Yes, now we can see that. Well, I was sharing my full screen, and design and development of technologies to preserve health and increase the life expectancy of the populations in the Arctic area. I should say that the plan of development of the northern sea route prioritizes the development of both onshore and offshore infrastructure, air and other technological, transportation and research infrastructure. Chinese research institutions can be included and engage in joint projects to develop environmentally friendly equipment and machinery, as well as build infrastructure to develop the Arctic. The Chinese companies can retool and upgrade in such areas as deep sea research, as well as the monitoring of the ice conditions, atmospheric phenomena, and biological processes. Also, for the Russian Arctic, China can become a source of technological innovation in the areas of the well drilling and operation of oil and gas wells, navigation and monitoring in ice-covered waters, as well as the development and construction of a new type of icebreakers. We analyzed the documents defining the strategic vision of Russia and of the Russian Arctic at the regional level. In general, we can see that there are opportunities to implement large-scale infrastructure projects, modernize existing infrastructure, and form cluster-type centers to attract investment, including the Chinese investment for the development of the Eastern Arctic. For example, we took the Krasnoyarsk territory, the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, and the Chukotka Autonomous District. The economic gravity points for the Arctic territories of Krasnoyarsk territory are new large resource projects. In particular, the infrastructure growth areas really match the newly explored oil, gas, and gold fields. Coastal areas where there are no many roads, and in the old industrial areas, such gravity points of growth would include strengthening energy and food security. In the Arctic area of Yakutia, there are large deposits of diamonds, gold, non-ferrous, and rare earth metals, coal, hydrocarbons, etc. The port of Tiksi is recognized as the hub of infrastructure management in the eastern part of the Northern Sea route. Potentially, the port of Tiksi can become the central hub of the Arctic Yakutia to serve export and import shipments along the Lena River and the NSR. Priorities for cooperation in the Chukotka Autonomous District are determined by the exploration and development of mineral deposits concentrated in the two industrial zones of accelerated development. Well, we can also specify some of the important areas of cooperation, and I should highlight here 7 areas of such cooperation: development of natural resources, commercial and freight navigation on the NSR, transportation and special machine building, power supply of the Arctic infrastructure, means of communications, monitoring and control systems and equipment, as well as testing equipment and special structures and materials for use in polar conditions. Judging by the pace of development of Russian-Chinese relations, we can hope that the list of such cooperation areas will expand in line with international partners and based on the experience of the Harbin Engineering University. Specific examples are the Sino-Russian Innovation Center for Marine Engineering, together with the Marinet Association and the Russian-Chinese Arctic Research Consortium, jointly with the Northern Arctic Federal University. Currently, also, we are in the process of establishing a Russian-Chinese laboratory for polar technologies as part of the One Belt, One Road initiative between Harbin Engineering University, St. Petersburg University, and Northern University. We are confident that this format of international research will help bring the positions of China and Russia closer together in the Arctic to better understand the mutual interests of the two countries and develop specific mechanisms for mutually beneficial cooperation. This concludes my presentation. I thank all of you for your attention. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference for the invitation to speak and the opportunities to speak before such a distinguished and representative audience. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Gao. Let me remind to you that the questions will be left until the end of this session. And now I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker to talk about a very important topic that we could not ignore, and namely the preservation of indigenous culture. The speaker will be the director of the Eliada non-profit organization, which has special consultative status with the United Nations, and the General Secretary of the Association of National Sports and Games of the Peoples of Yakutia, a member of the Council of the World Games of Indigenous Peoples of the World, Yershov Mikhail. The topic of the presentation is the promotion of the traditional culture of the peoples of northeast of Russia. Can you hear me? Thank you very much indeed. You can see my presentation, hopefully. No, we don't so far, but maybe we can launch that right away. Can you see that now? Not yet, sir, not yet. Down there below, you need to press a button which says share screen. And there we go. Can you see that? Yes, yes, we can see that now. Thank you. Dear participants in our today's conference, I would like to share with you some modest experience and expertise of my own from Yakutia, how the community, institutions, and groups can implement projects in the Arctic zone. Mikhail, can you launch a slideshow, because you still have the first slide there. Just press slideshow.
Нажимайте сначала, вот, да.
Yes, press it. Press that button right away. There we go.
Sorry, but otherwise it will be screen.
Вам нужно мышкой нажать на вот показ слайдов сначала. Мышкой нажать.
Вот сейчас пошла?
Да, все хорошо.
Ага. Еще раз извиняюсь.
Okay, well, sorry again for that. And our community group was registered in 2009, and the main purpose was to promote the traditional culture of the peoples of the northeast of Russia in international venues. Well, according to our plan, since 2010-2011, we started to implement various projects in the Pacific Coast, which is in California in the US. In 2011, at the invitation of the leaders of the Kuru tribe, in the north of California, we had this ritual of making obeisance to the spirit of the mountain of the American Indians. And that was a project that was really implemented on a grand scale, I would say, because the event actually attracted the leaders of the local communities and the chiefs of those tribes, and we shared our thoughts about our culture and traditions. Some of those projects you can see on our slides. We actually traveled many reservations and we demonstrated our musical instruments and traditional clothes. We discussed the culture of the North. Here's a person who was talking about the hunting practices of the Evenk. Yes, everything is okay. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, everything is okay. Now, later on, we also implemented another project. Well, we had big historical moment when our Russian traders had a chance to trade with Spaniards. They had a territory in Alaska, and we had many people coming from Yakutia engaged in the project. And they also worked in Fort Ross. You probably know about that. In 2012, as part of our 200 years of Fort Ross celebrations, we put up this totem in order of our compatriots, and that was next to Fort Ross. So.
Года два обговаривали, ну, в принципе, было с
Took us
1
a few years to discuss this project. And in 2012, we finally received an approval from this project, and it was finally implemented. 2014, we had the Yakutia Cultural Festival in California. This project was supported by the Consulate General of Russia in San Francisco. There were a number of projects implemented there. There was a whole cultural program. In fact, there was a big festival on the Pacific coast in Gualala in California. In the regional park of Arkbagak, we put up a totem complex, and there was a presentation of the national festivities. Here you can see this event taking place. There were quite a few people who were interested in our culture, not only from the town of Gualala, but there were visitors from other cities such as San Francisco, Los Angeles. It was one of the biggest projects we managed to implement in 2014. Also, as part of the Russian Pacific Cooperation Project, we put up a totem of friendship in Anchorage, Alaska. You can see our craftsmen here. It took them about 10 days to carve the totem out of Alaskan tree. There were 2 trees used, and we put it up. And you can see some diaspora people from Yakutia. They were very happy about this project. When we have the projects of this kind, we build very good and friendly relationships. This totem complex, this picture was taken 5 years after the totems were built. As you can see, they have darkened a little bit. So we keep coming, visiting. This took place in 2019. We came to repair the totems because they stand right on the shore of the Pacific Ocean, and therefore they are eroded by wind. They get too dry, and therefore we need to restore them from time to time. Obviously, we had a lot of friends who brought their own friends, and we had yet another presentation of our cultural traditions. Then we not only go back, but we also invite guests over. We invite our friends from the Indian reservations to come over to our place. Here you can see some of the representatives of different Indian tribes of California. In 2019, they came to visit us in Yakutia. They came for the immersion experience. We invited them over to take part in a traditional cultural festival. Our projects are not limited to California and totems. We have educational and cultural exchange programs as well. If I'm not mistaken, this photo was taken in 2019 in Albuquerque. This was a big festival, Indian festival, a big powwow. This was a great opportunity to see various forms of art of North American Indians. After events of this kind, we usually take a trip. So this time we went to the University of Technology, Navajo Technical University. They invited us to come, and we also signed an agreement on further cooperation and student exchange. We also decided it would make sense to have a number of cultural projects. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, our cooperation was halted, but I think in the future we will definitely implement those projects. We're also interested in various historic projects, the various theories of how the Indians came to live in North America. As you know, there is a theory that they may have migrated via the Bering Strait, that they were actually tribes from the northeast of Russia. This is one of the theories that is being studied at Stanford University at the Department of Molecular Biology. And we have a researcher there, a professor who is in charge of the molecular biology department at Stanford University. He has been cooperating with us for several years. It's our third year of cooperation. He is a supporter of the theory that the North American continent was inhabited by the tribes that migrated from the northeast of Russia. So he demonstrated his theory to us, and we agreed that we will continue to keep in touch. It's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your presentation. Right, I'm signing off. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Mikhail. And our next speaker will be a person who is present at our event today in person. He is in charge of the interaction between the Russian foreign scientists. He provides them with support and assistance in the implementation of the Arctic research projects. Director of the Chukotka Research Support Group, a non-profit partnership, Gennady Zelensky. The topic of his presentation is the practice of the Chukotka Research Support Group in the management of international projects in Chukotka. Mikhail, you need to stop sharing the screen. Thank you very much. And Gennady? Hello, I'm Gennady Zelensky, and I'm the director of the Chukotka Research Support Group, a non-profit partnership. Our partnership was created in 2001 by two organizations that represented the interests of the residents of Chukotka, the Vulcan and PUPIC. These two organizations started working in 1980s, and they were very active in various exchange projects between Chukotka and Alaska. And the researchers didn't know how to get to Chukotka, how to organize research there, because very often researchers were interested in having two continents covered by their research. But Chukotka is a very difficult region for people who come there for the first time. We are talking about very poor transport network. And we realized that we needed to have an organization in place that would support researchers in their desire to get to Chukotka to continue their research. As you can see here, this is where Chukotka is located. I'm sure that you all know this, but a lot of people are asking us where exactly this is located. So this is a picture from space. The main objective of this organization is to provide logistical support to various research projects and cooperation between Chukotka and Alaska. We want to encourage research activities in Chukotka, trying to involve the indigenous peoples in the research projects. As I said, Chukotka is a very remote area. It's very hard to reach, and the transport logistics is very difficult. You can get to Anadyr by plane, but in Chukotka, the problem of transport becomes the most important. There's basically no transport there. For example, the village of Lavrientiev, where we are located, in order to get to the village of Onyeshko, it takes 2 weeks. There are other options, of course. You can take all-terrain transport, helicopters, but people arriving at Chukotka for the first time do not know who to talk to and where to get the transport. And this is where we come in. As you can see, we still use dogs in Chukotka. And a few more examples of the projects that we had. Over the period of 20 years, we have supported dozens of research areas and projects in different areas. We mostly concentrate on the environmental protection and ethnography. Some projects take place in Alaska and some projects take place in Chukotka. One of the large-scale projects that we supported in the past was the Circumpolar Active Layer Monitoring Network. This is an international project that involves a lot of countries and a lot of areas around the Arctic Circle. There's a group in Anadyr and 2 in Chukotka, one near Lavrientiev and the other near the Ozersk village. The group that had been working near the Lavrientiev has been working for 17 years, actually. We also thought that Professor Pasternak from the University of Alaska Fairbanks would be able to participate in this conference. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it. But this is a very interesting ethnography-related project. More ethnic research, a comparative study of medical ethnobotany. This is a joint project together with St. Petersburg State University, with the European University and the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. How medicinal plants are used by the indigenous peoples of Alaska and Chukotka. And as I said, Chukotka is a special region. The researchers who plan to do research in the area need to understand that access to foreigners may be restricted. So it takes time to prepare, to send in all the documents, to receive all the permits. It takes a lot of time. The law says 30 days, but it may take much longer. As I said, the logistics may be quite difficult to organize. Sometimes the availability of airline tickets may have to force you to adjust your plans because the local residents buy air tickets in the summertime, and it's very difficult to find a spare ticket. Sometimes it is possible to rent an apartment, but in the villages you don't have any hotels, and you have to agree with the local residents and rent some kind of room or lodging, and it takes time. Another problem that we face is the transport of equipment. You can either ship your equipment by air or by water. It's very expensive. It's expensive to do it by air, and by water is very difficult because of the unstable weather and because of the fact that ships call in very rarely. So if you are planning to do research in Chukotka, you need to understand that everything needs to be planned in advance. You have to start your planning a year ahead. You need to get all the necessary permits for the equipment, for the actual research plan, especially if this is an international research project. International researchers need to have a Russian partner, because our experience shows that foreign research centers may do research in Chukotka, but they encounter a lot of problems, and some of them are easier to resolve if they are in cooperation with a Russian research center. I can't say that it is totally impossible, but our experience shows that this makes things a little more difficult. And of course, you have to expect to be flexible. The conditions may change very quickly, the weather, the transport, and there may be other circumstances. Well, that seems to be all I wanted to cover.
Спасибо, Игорь Николаевич. Ну что ж, друзья, подошла к концу наша
Thank you
первая.
very much. Well, dear friends, we're coming to the end of the first session. All the speakers have presented their reports, and now we can move on to the Q&A session. So first of all, I would suggest that we read out the questions from the chat and the questions from the audience who are physically based here in the room. So we'll take care of both questions that have been submitted in the Zoom chat that Marina will read out for us and the ones from the room. Are there any questions from those physically present in the room at the moment? Yes, please try to speak up. Dear presenters, thank you very much for interesting presentations. I have a question to Marina and Juha. So one of the key problems of the economic analysis relates to the difficulties of co-writing scientific publications and submitting requests for receiving grants. You have partially touched on this issue when you were presenting your information on the key problems and challenges that the Japan-Russian cooperation faces. But nonetheless, what is your personal opinion? Why is it so difficult? Why there are so many challenges, particularly when we try to co-author all types of publications? Thank you very much.
Can I ask first asking? I'm sorry can I ask a question in Russian? It will be easier. Можно я по-русски уточню? Я хотела еще раз.
If I may, I'd like to specify your question once again. Would you please introduce yourself? We couldn't hear you properly. The sound is somewhat poor. And your question, again, I was listening your question in English. Does your question relate to joint publications and joint application for the grant specifically from the Japanese side, right? Yes, and I'm sorry for not introducing myself. I'm the Vice Rector for Scientific Work, and I represent the University of Railway Transportation. Yes, you understood my question correctly, but it was probably a bit broader. I'm not relating particularly to the difficulties faced from the Japanese side, but generally, what is the key challenge of co-writing the publications? What are the key challenges that you personally have faced, and what you think are the mechanisms that didn't work properly? Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. If I may just share some of my personal thoughts. Obviously, why it's difficult. One thing I think is language barrier. English is kind of the lingua franca in the academic world nowadays, and my own personal case, the problem is that I don't speak any Russian. So therefore, I would highly appreciate the opportunity to co-author with Russian scholars who have access and knowledge to Russian sources. But then again, there is also the need there's the need to publish in English, and then there are different, let's say, national ways of publishing research. Also here in Japan, they often, Japanese scholars tend to publish in Japanese, in Japan's domestic publications. I have understood that also in Russia, you have the habit quite often to publish in Russian journals. And then the way how you are supposed to express your research findings may be different in this, English written articles that usually reflect the Western way of how to present your scientific findings. And that, again, might be difficult for both Japanese and Russian scholars or anybody else coming, from the non-Western European and American background. But I think that's just a kind of almost a sad truth that there is this dominating discourse coming from US and from Europe, telling how you should express and describe your research findings. Not only about the language, but also the style. How do you do it? I think that's one of the issues. It's difficult sometimes to adapt into this kind of publication culture. That is obviously nowadays, the international publication houses. The power is in the hands of few actors, and they are kind of telling and setting the norms that we should follow. According to my understanding, that's one of the reasons why it might be a bit difficult sometimes for Russian and Japanese authors to publish internationally.
И с вашего позволения,
And if I may, I would also add a few words. The thing is that I initially received my education and completed my master program, and I defended my PhD in Japan, and then I got back and continued working in Novosibirsk Federal University. I've done my postgraduate study there, and then I returned to Japan. So several times I've been changing my positions and my outlook on the situation, the way I saw. And I currently worked at the HARP program with more than 156 partner universities, to be precise. Those are the partner universities that we've been constantly in touch from the Russian side, and we face that type of challenges regularly. So we see that in the Japanese universities, there are not just Japanese researchers working, as you can see, there is Yuha and researchers from all countries of the globe. So that is probably, I could make some generalizations based on the experience I have accumulated. So first of all, whenever we talk about structuring all types of scientific international collaborations. Well, I guess automatically, as soon as you interact with a representative of other culture, you have to allocate more time for that than normally planned to what you do in Russia. I've already mentioned it before that in Russia, we plan short term mostly. You live through today, you live through the present, but whenever you have to make some plans, you have to be prepared for sudden changes. And it is always better if you can adapt quickly and if you can act quickly before the situation changes. On the other hand, in Japan and in many European countries, you would see that the planning is more long-term with a longer planning horizon. And as a result, you have to allocate more time for discussions, for communication. And very frequently, my non-Japanese colleagues receive invitation to submit joint applications for the grant that should have been done yesterday, or it has to be done in 2 weeks. Well, that is certainly way too short. Of course, there are all types of burning offers or last-minute offers, and my colleagues from various countries working in Japan understand it. But I think this is something you can do when you've been working with a person for a very long time and the person knows you very well. Otherwise, and that is very frequently the case, that might be an offer to all stakeholders. And this is something that might be somewhat intimidating or scary for people who do not know you personally. This is the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I wanted to comment on relates to the fact that my foreign colleagues working in Japan have a broader network of contacts. Therefore, I would say they have a broader selection of application and offers, and they try to go for safe options, so to say. It's no secret that a major role is played by the political environment that is shaping a high degree of certainty or a low degree of certainty, especially if you're doing publication on some sensitive topics. So that is also an important factor impacting the possibility of cooperation. But I would say nearly always you can resolve that type of issues if you postpone your planning horizon a little bit. So if you go not for take it or leave it options, but if you're ready for discussions, sometimes you just need to wait for a person to get ready, especially if the invitation is coming from a somewhat unusual or unknown region to them. So that would be my answer. Thank you very much. Thank you indeed, Marina. Thank you, Yuka. Are there any further questions, colleagues? Any questions from the room? Well, if no, then I suggest we could move on to the questions submitted in the chat. Marina, over to you.
Yes, I will read out. So the first question was from David Baramidze. I have a few questions. The first question was, does Japan have a state Arctic program in the field of the Arctic development and environmental protection? And the second question was, where could I get the document? Thank you. And my colleague Juha says he can answer this question.
Yes, so I hope you hear me. I was assuming that this
Okay, one more question.
Arctic programs in the field of Arctic development and environmental protection, if it refers to Japan's Arctic strategy, that one was announced in 2015. And if you look in the chat, I put there a link to this document, and there is also an unofficial English translation available. So this would be Japan's Arctic strategy, if that's the document that was asked. Then again, if you take something like environmental protection and observation and things like that, then it comes to the field of science. And I guess the most relevant thing at the moment would be Japan's relatively new Arctic flagship research project that is called Arctic Challenge for Sustainability 2, ARX2. And I also put in the chat a link to the homepage of ARX2 that describes what Japanese scientific community is trying to do during the next 5 years or so.
Okay, he says thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ага. Хорошо, я перехожу тогда к следующему вопросу.
Excellent. Then I will move on to the next question, if I may.
To Gao Tianming. Can you hear us? Oh, you can read it.
Да, я вас слышу, вы меня слышите?
Yes, I can hear you all right. Can you hear me as well?
Мгм.
Yes, we can hear you.
Actually, this question comes from me, so you have. So future cooperation between Russia and China in the Arctic-related matters. I was interested in hearing your opinion. You know, this Russian and cooperation between Russia and China, how much it will be based on a bilateral scientific cooperation, and to what extent you think it will take place, you know, within the EU-Arctic thematic networks or other types of multilateral forums where, you know, scientists and others together.
Спасибо за вопрос. Я
Thank you for the question.
попробую ответить. Во-первых,
I will try to answer it.
механизм сотрудничества
First of all, I would say that the mechanism for cooperation in the Arctic are reflected in various documents. Those are high-level documents that date back to 2013. Those are declarations of the leaders of those two countries. And virtually on an annual basis, this document is being updated. And there you can find information on all the issues that are on the agenda of cooperation between Russia and China. That also includes issues of scientific cooperation. Secondly, I would say that within the framework of regular meetings of heads of governments of Russia and China, and also specific committees and the meetings of various ministries are also covering those issues on their respective agendas. So they regulate cooperation between Russia and China in the Arctic. That is also being regulated between the cooperation of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Transport, and the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation and its counterpart in Japan. So those issues are being covered on all different levels. And that is the mechanism of cooperation of the two countries on the Arctic. There is also cooperation on the level of regional municipalities and governments. There are similar mechanisms of cooperation on the municipal levels. I would also say that the Chinese organization and scientific institutes are actively engaged in all types of scientific conferences, and that includes all types of conferences and all types of forums, the Arctic forums that is being conducted in St. Petersburg. So international forums is also an opportunity for us to cooperate. We all know that in order to have a sustainable cooperation in the Arctic, it is important to engage not just China and Russia, but also certainly international partners. Therefore, international agenda is also broad for us. We use all type of international forum for cooperation. If we talk about the EU-Arctic network, I would say that it all depends on the specific topic. If we talk about natural sciences, then we have somewhat broader cooperation. We also do cooperate in terms of humanities. But if you ask me about the peculiarities of my university, I would say we're more focused on the engineering aspects. We have presence on the EU-Arctic thematic networks as well, but We are more focused on the bilateral relationship between Russia and China, but I wouldn't say that our universities is playing a vital role there. So far, we're still working on that. Well, I guess that's what I would say so far.
Thank you.
We have one more question from Roman Porozov, the Ural State Pedagogical University. So the question was, how do you see the role of non-Arctic educational institutions, for example, universities, in strengthening Russian-Japanese cooperation on the Arctic and North-related issues?
Okay.
Non-Arctic state universities.
Arctic education.
Yeah.
So again, it's a question: how do you see the role of non-Arctic educational institutions? Well, if you think for the role of Hokkaido University in the case of Japan's Arctic engagement, it plays extremely significant role. In Japan, we have ongoing projects like ARCS-2, we have JARCnet and other projects that bring together the expertise that Japan has related to Arctic matters. And here we have three key actors, one being Hokkaido University that has established the Arctic Research Center that's only of its kind in Japan. And Hokkaido University is also the only member in U-Arctic in Japan. And then we have Polar Research Institute and JAMSTEC, Marine Earth Science Center. Those actors are in Tokyo. So obviously, if you think Japan's Arctic policy, it emphasizes the importance that that Japan contributes to the global community and to the Arctic community through research, and that's also when Japan has joined the Arctic Council as an observer. It has made this commitment that it will contribute to through research. Then again, if you think Arctic Council and how it works, and we have these working groups where some of my colleagues participate as representatives of Japan. So there's also this kind of clear cooperation between government and Institute of Higher Education, like our university, in a way that dispatching researchers and experts of the field to international forums to represent Japan. So that's clearly one thing. Again, it's universities. According to my understanding here in Japan, we can make initiatives, and then we may receive support then from authorities. And one more thing is that again, this industry, academia, government cooperation. So it's not only the national government, but for example, our university is tightly cooperating with the regional government, and also to some extent also with municipalities. So in that sense, I think the academic community and universities in Japan has a relatively tight connection with the government and play maybe a stronger role in Japan's involvement with the Arctic than the academic community is playing in Japan's policy concerning some other geographical regions. Basically, because the science in general plays such an important role in Arctic issues, in also related to Arctic governance. So the fact that universities and even individual research are playing such an important role in Japan's engagement with the Arctic reflects this kind of international trend where universities are, important players. So sorry, this was a rather long answer. Hopefully it answered the question.
Juha, thank you very much for your answer. So I've heard three ways. The first one is expert groups. The second is implementation of initiatives. And the third one, academic community. Am I right? Do I understand you correctly?
Yeah, well, that was a great summary.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Алексей, у меня есть еще один вопрос.
Alexei, I have another question, but if we have someone from the audience to ask a question, please, I would rather prefer to give the floor to somebody from the audience, or I can voice the other question. Do we have any questions from the audience in the hall? If so, please go ahead. Or then
With your kind permission, to Gennady Zelensky. Chukotka is an extremely attractive and interesting region, I think, for many researchers in Japan. And while working at Hokkaido University, I have tried to contact Chukotka local authorities, international departments, and the university, the nephew branch, Northeastern Federal University branch, but I could not get a response, so I was not successful. Who would you advise to contact for proposals of academic and maybe also industry government collaboration from Japan?
He's moving towards the microphone.
Maybe he will answer in English.
in Chukotka government, we have an international department led by Natalia Ivanovna, and maybe you can address her for that. That this would be the official channel. Informally, you can also call us and get some consultancy with us. Would it be enough for you?
Да, я уже попробовала по официальному.
Yes, indeed. I tried to use the official channel.
Это не работает, поэтому, наверное.
This doesn't work, so perhaps with your permission, I'll contact you. Yes, please go ahead and you can get in touch with us, and we'll relay your wishes to Natalia Ivanovna. We are in close contact with them.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Алексей, уже 25 минут, мы, наверное.
Alexei, it is now 25 past, which is right on the minute, so to say, and we do have a lively discussion. Maybe we can make a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll resume with the second session of our conference, and we will have Yelena Zaostrovskis to speak first, so please don't be late, and I'll give you the floor. Now we have a break for 10 minutes.
Уважаемые гости и участники,
Dear guests and participants, we are about to end our recess, and I hope that you're all back and reconnected, or maybe you stayed online with us. We had some intermission, a funny one, from one of our guests, but so please do remember to mute your microphones. So we're about to open our second session of the conference, and the topic would be the role and place of cross-border business cooperation in the socio-economic development of the Eastern Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. And indeed, in today's realities, we are increasingly beginning to engage in a dialogue about the development of Arctic businesses and the implementation of regional projects. Special attention is paid to creating conditions for doing business and developing logistics. And hence, I would like to give the floor to PhD in economics, senior researcher of the Institute of Economic Research of the Far Eastern branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Yelena Zaostrovsky. And the topic of her report would be the evolution of the ports of the Eastern Arctic and their coastal regions in the context of the development of the Northern Sea Route. Let me share my screen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at this conference. I can say that I represent here the Institute of Economic Research, and I am researching the maritime transportation and the economics of the region. I also teach at the Far Eastern University at the island of Russky in Vladivostok. I'm teaching transportation and logistics, and my students are also taking part in this conference. I hope that this would be a useful event for them. We are training future logistics experts, and that would be important and needed for the businesses and the government. So I will be talking about the evolution of the ports of Eastern Arctic and the coastal regions. Well, the attention of researchers to the Northern Sea Route is related to the intense melting of the Arctic ice. Over the past 35 years, the ice shrank by 30%, and in the next 30 years, it will shrink by another 50%. And by 2100, ice will remain only off the coasts of Canada and Greenland. And all of this, of course, will lead to a change in the configuration of the maritime transportation network and the formation of alternative transportation routes. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, we do.
Пожалуйста, выключите свои микрофоны, помимо докладчика.
Please mute your microphones on your phones. Whoever is not speaking, please mute your microphones on the phones. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Елена Анатольевна, продолжайте.
Thank you for muting. Please, Yelena, go ahead. So if climate change persists, the Northern Sea Route may well compete with the Southern Sea Route and open up the possibility of developing two routes, the National Arctic Transportation System and the International Transit Corridor. At the same time, there are different opinions of researchers regarding the fact that the NSR is maybe a promising and commercially feasible. Some argue that reducing the travel distance by 40% when using the NSR does not mean a corresponding reduction in operating costs, and the main deterrent here is the need for an icebreaker support. Other researchers believe that reducing this travel distance would not really lead to a significant reduction in fuel costs, since in low temperatures and the need for constant maneuvering in ice, fuel consumption increases, thereby more or less offsetting the advantage of the NSR in travel distances. Still, others note that the use of the NSR in the current circumstances is economically feasible only for the transportation of liquid and bulk cargo, but not container cargoes. Moreover, in the coming years, this will persist, and the use of the NSR potentially reduces time and costs only during August-November period, which is clearly not enough for any economically feasible cargo navigation. Of course, such arguments are not in favor of the Northern Sea route. However, if we do analyze some of the events over the last 10 years, it becomes clear that we are wary that Egypt is wary of the development of the NSR and is preparing for some tough competition. In 2012, Somali pirates who had been looting ships in the Gulf of Aden for many years were more or less destroyed and eliminated. Also, the second channel of the Suez Canal was built in record time, which made it possible to significantly increase the speed of passage of sea vessels. In addition, some key factors have influenced the change of the role and importance of the NSR. Increasing trade flow imbalances and rising tariffs on the main route, increased interport competition, which required to revisit the main ports in trade routes, and the reallocation of costs and benefits between shipping companies and ports due to increased ship sizes and the formation of mega alliances. All of the above indicates that there is an urgent need to form alternative transportation routes. In Russia, when developing the Northern Sea route, more and more attention is paid to the Arctic territories and the sea transport. According to the main programs of the country, infrastructure will be built for the development of the potential points of economic growth, including the comprehensive development of new territories and mineral development of the mineral deposits in the Arctic zone. In this regard, it is planned to create 8 reference zones in conjunction with the Arctic ports on preferential terms, and for the development of transit traffic. 2 Arctic hubs will be created at the entrance and exit of the NSR route, that is, in the ports of Murmansk and Kamchatka. We assume that the development of production facilities in the Arctic zone will ensure the loading of transport, remove infrastructure restrictions, and attract additional transit cargo. As a result, there will be some favorable conditions created for an intensive increase in freight transportation. And the current the realities of the economic development will lead us to take a fresh look at how the NSR in the Arctic regions will develop. And I would like to talk about that today. In my report, I will highlight 3 key points, features of the NSR development and global transportation trends, Arctic regions of the Eastern Arctic and seaports, and some assessments of the prospects of the development of ports in the Eastern Arctic and the coastal regions. Well, the history of the Northern Sea route, the history of the development was had both ups and downs. With the transition of the country to a market-based form of management, the infrastructure of the NSR route was in a deep systemic crisis for a long time, and freight transportation barely met the internal needs of the residents of the northern regions. The current period is associated with the overcoming of the crisis and sustainable growth. In 2016, the maximum loads of the Soviet period was exceeded of 7.4 million tons, and in 2020 a new record was set of 32.9 million tons. Transit of freight had a different trend on the NSR route. It emerged in 2010 as a result of reducing the requirements for the level of ice protection of ships. It reached its maximum in 2013, and since 2014 it began to gradually decline until 2019. The exception was 2020, when the transit volume was 1.2 million tons. The reason for that was the well-known traffic collapse on the Suez Canal. The growth of freight shipment along the NSR was supported by a steady increase in oil, coal, iron ore, and LNG production by such large companies as Yamal LNG, Gazprom Neft, and Gazprom. We may claim that the more active navigation along the NSR route is based exclusively on the need to transport Russian freight. One of the main problems is the poorly developed transportation infrastructure, including the state of Arctic ports. I should say that if you take all the ports of the Arctic countries, there are 82 of them, and about a quarter of those are Russian ports, and the largest is the port of Murmansk, with a cargo turnover of 56 million tons in 2020. The rest of the world's Arctic ports are classified as small, with a limited number of berths and repair shops. The map shows the main and prospective port projects. I should say that most of the modernized and newly built ports are actually in Russia. The decision to develop Arctic ports in each country depends on the number and the degree of economic development of the adjacent regions. In the Scandinavian countries, the development of the Arctic ports is based on the theory of endogenous economic growth, and in the US and Canada, they rely on the search for innovative opportunities for the economic development of newly developed territories, and in Russia, on the triad of placing of productive forces and economic zoning and territorial production complexes, which means that the combination of these factors will set strategic guidelines for the development of both regions and the Arctic ports themselves. At the same time, many factors have recently affected the effectiveness of the developments of the marine industry. Trade policy tensions, unfavorable economic conditions, sanctions, trade wars, low growth in oil demand, the COVID-19 pandemic, and supply disruptions as a result of natural disasters. This led to the fact that cargo transportation by sea reached its worst in 2020. Another important factor is the decline of the role of the seaport in the development of the adjacent region, which means that the economic benefits are transferred to some other regions, and the negative costs and consequences remain with the port area. Which means that the costs are growing and people are actually flowing out of the port area. So researchers are really looking into ways how to make seaports again the driving force for the economic growth, and how to overcome the negative consequences of port operations. This requires some careful consideration, especially because you need to find a balance between economic, social, and environmental values. And this is very much true of the Arctic region and its ports. So Arctic regions and seaports in new economic circumstances. Currently, the land area of the Eastern Arctic is 33% of the total area of the Russian Far East, and houses 164 settlements with about 160,000 people living there. The peculiarity of this area is that the sectoral structure of the economy is poorly diversified, and transportation facilities really are focused on the export of minerals, and the development of the Eastern Arctic depends on the efficiency of maritime transportation. Now, we had 4 stages in the development for the ports of the Eastern Arctic, and the current 4th stage or phase of this development really is linked to some active development of the Arctic area, where ports are considered as system-forming elements that will have a positive impact on the adjacent territories and contribute to the development of the NSR. Now, in the first half of the 80s, ports more or less had the same story, and this is going to be taken into account for the current trends. Namely, we need to create a logistics infrastructure for transit traffic, form a communication system for safe navigation, and create safe ports to prevent emergencies. The current period of development of ports in cargo shipments in the Arctic is characterized by the following trend. projects. First, restoration of the so-called Northern Delivery Program, which has been running intermittently for a long time. Second, this is an increase in the volume of cargo transshipment in ports since 2014, which was caused by the implementation of some infrastructure projects. And third, this is a change in the ratio between the population and volume of cargo transshipment. More or less, these means that this is the beginning of the revival of the ports. But this is not enough, and we need to really solve two problems. The first is the development of ports in the Eastern Arctic in conjunction with the economy of the adjacent territories. This will ensure intensive development of enterprises and provide employment. And second is the formation of a transportation and logistics system. From the point of view of the regional economy, the most profitable is the revenue from transport and logistics services.
And the third part that I would like to tell you about concerns the future of the development. In accordance with the new program of development, the volume of shipment by 2024 would be 80 million tons. By 2035, 120 million tons. The national shipments will come from the liquefied natural gas and various minerals. These projects will make it possible to increase the volumes of export shipments as well as nearshore shipments. There are a lot of construction materials that need to be shipped around. For each port, the export increase will bring about the increase of nearshore shipment as well. The western part of the Arctic will have an increase of 80 million tons in shipments in the near future because of the abundance of minerals and in this area. In the east of the Arctic, only 12 million tons will be the increase of the volume of shipment. However, this may still become a big hub, and the picture for the future is quite optimistic. 33 million tons in total is the forecasted volume of shipment. There's a terminal for storage and refining of the natural gas, and there are new terminals for general cargoes as well as bulk cargoes. However, not everything is clear for these terminals. It is still believed that the projects will be implemented very soon. I'm sorry, but you don't have much time left. You only have 1 minute left. Thank you very much. I only have a couple of slides. So what I can say is that the overall trends for the new projects may help to boost the port infrastructure, where the negative consequences will prevail over the positive prevails, as it happened in the Far East. And it would seem that the prospective projects do not support the general idea of the development of ports and the adjacent territories. And in the future, the projects should focus more on the environment, safety, and the overall regional development, taking into account the interests of the local population. That seems to be all I wanted to cover today. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. This was a very informative presentation on a very, very relevant topic, and hopefully there will be questions to you and we'll be able to come back to this discussion focusing on specific points of your presentation. I would also like to remind you of an opportunity to ask questions in the chat. You can write your questions in the Zoom chat. Please make sure who you address this question to and your affiliation. Our next presentation will focus on the role of state planning and international cooperation in the economic development of the Arctic. The speaker will be Professor, Head of the Arctic Center of the Oceanological University of China, Professor Guo Beiqing. The topic of the presentation is a comparison of the new Northern Policy and the Ice Silk Road. Thank you very much. Professor Go, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Many thanks for the invitation from the Khabarovsk State University of Economics and Law. The topic, I have changed a little about my topic. I will discuss the comparison study between the new Northern Policy put forward by the South Korea, and the Ice Silk Road. This new term, Ice Silk Road, some people also call it the Polar Silk Road. I think it is same. This term is co-initiated by the both presidents from China and Russia in 2017. So, and in my presentation, firstly, I will discuss the basis for cooperation between Korea's new Northern Policy and Ice Silk Road, initiated by the Russia and China. The second, I will show the competition between the new Northern Policy and Ice Silk Road. The last will be the advice. And Korea, the Republic of Korea and China are both the active participants for the Arctic issues. And I think why I choose the Korea and China as as my topics. I think the China, Korea, and Russia, their territory are connected directly. So it's really worthwhile to explore the collaboration mechanism. And China and Korea are the active participants, especially, and both countries have released their own Arctic policy. In 2017, South Korea released the new Southern Policy. The same year, China and also released her own policy. Usually we call it as the China, the Arctic White Paper. Also, then in the same year, in 2017, the China and Russia could initiated the Ice Silk Road. So I think the new Northern Policy and the Ice Silk Road share some of the common characters. The first is that both have both point the same direction. That is to say, the both strategy pointing to the North and Arctic. New Northern Policy aims to improve and promote the relationship with the northern countries, including Russia, China, Mongolia, and Arctic also is taken as the important integral part of the new Northern Policy. Here, we call it the ANP, and the implementation of the ANP are reflected as the 9 bridges strategy, mainly focusing on the cooperation of 9 fields, ranging from the natural gas, railway, harbor, and to the shipbuilding, agriculture, and aquaculture cooperation, also including the industry zone building cooperation. The Ice Silk Road, we call it ISSR, is still a nuclear concept. Some people confused where is the starting points and the ending points of this new term, Polar Silk Road or Ice Silk Road. I think it's necessary to clarify or to take it serious.
Which is regarded starting from Northeast Asia.
So and this concept is regarded starting from the Northeast Asia marginal ocean and traversing Northern Sea Road to the North Atlantic, maybe ending at the North Sea or ends at the harbor of the Iceland. Take a look at this map. This is the new. This map shows the 9 bridge strategy. This map shows the 3 corridors. Look at the top, the corridors, Northern Sea Road and Ice Silk Road. I think the Northern Silk Road is one integral part of the Arctic Road. So the Arctic Road, combining with Silk Road economic belt and the maritime Silk Road, 3 corridors, and constructing the close connection within Eurasia continent. The second is the NEP, the New Northern Policy, and the Arctic Road. The both of them share the same plan, have the same plan of Arctic development. New Northern Policy pays much attention to Arctic passage, Arctic oil and gas development, including ice-breaking LNG vessel. The New Northern Policy is the continuation of the Korea Arctic Master Plan and Arctic Policy Action Plan declared by the former administration. Korea has been planning to construct Arctic harbor city like Busan. Arctic development is being integrating into the national country strategy of Korea. The Commission for Northern Economic Cooperation, this new commission is our high position and takes much responsibility for the Arctic participation. Arctic Road, and it's still it is still a new and clear concept, but it is regarded as and Arctic Road we all contribute to the Arctic development and share the same mission as a New Northern Policy. So therefore, China and Korea are 2 biggest driving forces and users of commercial shipping of the Northern Sea Road. The third, the same character is the New Northern Policy and Arctic Road can contribute to the Northeast Asia connection or integration. New Northern Policy as one of the mission is dedicated to the mitigation and development of the Korea Peninsula and promote Northeast Asia integration. Arctic Road plays an important role in the logistics system of the Northeast Asia, including China, Korea, Japan, and Russia. And Russia also is active to explore to join the coming Northeast Asia integration. Look at this, the picture below. So, and in this year, President Putin has declared to construct one railway connecting the Yakutsk to the China, and mainly using for the coal transportation. I think this new railway will strengthen the ties, and among between the Far East and Northeast Asia, and so this railway and plus in the Lena River. Personally, I think construct a new corridor connecting the Northeast Asia, Far East, and Arctic Passage. So the New Northern Policy and the Arctic Road merge at the Northeast China, Northeast China. So extending to the Sakha-Yakutia Republic. Look at the map below. So what will, if this connection or this new corridor were constructed, what will happen? So I think one new large potential economy association maybe emerge, maybe happen, and it can match with the ASEAN. Why? We have much advantages. So from different sides, South Korea has much capital and technology on the manufacturer. So North Korea has much abundant and human resources, and China. So its advantages lies in the heavy industry ability and the advanced transportation network. So Russia has much resources and and the corridor centered centric at the Lena River and also the Northern Sea Route. So what's that's now we talk about much of the advantages. What is the disadvantages? In fact, there is some competition between the New Northern Policy and the Arctic route. Firstly, I think so. We have to figure out what we can we figure out the some areas we can build together. First is the mutual trust between New Northern Policy and the Arctic route. On the one hand, the South Korea hopes to profit from the cooperation with China. But on the other hand, South Korea also worries about China may control the South Korea with economic leverage. That's some concern, maybe also popular a couple years ago. And South Korea also asking China, even older Japan, realized that it will be better to collaborate with other and in the area in Arctic in Arctic development, but there is some deep concern among three countries. Another is the geopolitics challenge. So a stable situation in the North Asia, particularly the Korea Peninsula, may affect seriously the cooperation between the New Northern Policy and the Arctic route. So the biggest intervener force may be the USA. According to the Brzezinski Grand Chessboard, the fragmentation of the Eurasia continent is in the interest of the US. So any initiative and motivation for integration will face obstacle. The third is security concern from the Japan. Japan Sea or Eastern Sea, including the Soya Strait and the Tsugaru Strait, is the portal or the portal gate for the either New Northern Policy or Arctic route to the ICP. So Japan, the misinterpreting the Chinese commercial and the science vessel shipping is another negative factor. So what's the advice to address this competition? I think first it is we should plan the corridor connecting South Korea and North Korea, Northeast China, Russia, Far East, including Lena River Valley and the Northern Sea Route, to construct a new corridor. So third is we may introduce Russia into the trilateral cooperation mechanism existing, originated by China, Korea, and Japan. So if without participation of the China, Korea, Japan, it is unpractical for the Russia Arctic development. So and vice versa. So Russia is the same partner for the three countries. The third is to establish the Northeast Asia Development Organization, supposed for Arctic. So I think our cooperation maybe can spill over into our integration in the Northeast Asia. So it is possible to establish Northeast Asia Development Organization, so matching with the ASEAN. So collaborating advantages of different countries. So Arctic Development Bank, this new bank supposed, like the AIIB, it could be put on into agenda. So the cut-throat competition on the harbor port. So especially the Northeast countries, they are competing for the harbor port connecting the Arctic Pacific and the Northeast and the hubs of Northeast Asia. So so on the harbor port and oil and gas trade will be avoided. So thanks for your attention.
Все зависит от компетенции, опыта и чего-то не объяснить.
Все, спасибо большое, профессор
Thank you very
Гаал.
much. Thank you, Professor Garo, for your participation. Please, I would like to ask the participants to make sure they switch off their microphones. Alexander Dobrinin, if I'm not mistaken, your mic is on. Please switch it off. So please make sure that you switch your mics off.
Вторую секцию нашей конференции.
So we're happy to continue with the second part of our conference, and I'd like to invite the next speaker, who is going to discuss the conditions of doing business in the Arctic business. And the presenter is the Chief of Staff of the Legislative Duma of the Khabarovsk territory. That is also a person directly working in our region. And the topic of the presentation is legal features of doing business in the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. Dear colleagues, please mute your microphones unless you're the speaker. Okay, good afternoon, dear participants of the online conference. Today we are talking about the cross-border interregional cooperation as the key driver of the Eastern Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. My presentation would be somewhat different from the presentations that would be focused around the development of the Northern Sea route. My topic is somewhat different, and I would like to focus on the development of small and medium-sized enterprises in the region. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all on the behalf of the chairman of the Legislative Duma of the Khabarovsk region. Many of the persons present here, many of the speakers present here know me from the experience of work I've been doing at the Center of Research of the SCO in the SC Pacific region. Now I work at the Legislative Duma of the Khabarovsk region, but I still continue my research activities. And one of the problems that we are focused on is the development of medium and small enterprises in the Arctic region. We've been speaking at various platforms. We've been covering all those issues. We've made some publications in various scientific magazines. Just lately, we made a publication on the Arctic and research in the Russian Far East. That was published in the section of the Far Eastern Department of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And my current position allows me to take a somewhat different look on all those problems, namely from the legislative viewpoints. And I have to start with the hypothesis that we promote, and that is namely that the sustainable development of the Arctic territories is largely conditioned by the state of small and medium-sized enterprises. And our employees have been presenting this idea in their numerous publications and reports that you can also find at our official website. We've also presented our reasoning on this hypothesis. So I will not repeat it in order to take more time. I actually believe that the majority of people present here have read those publications. The importance of small and medium-sized enterprises for the region is emphasized by a federal law that came into force in June 2020, that is the law on the state support to the entrepreneurial activities in the Arctic zone of Russia. At the same time, small and medium-sized enterprises in the far north and in the Arctic are encountering a whole number of difficulties that result in high labor cost, and also as a consequences, there is negative impact on the competitiveness of those businesses, the possibilities of economic development and economic motivation to develop. That is conditioned not just by environmental difficulties and remote location, as well as shortages of transport, energy and other infrastructure, small labor and supply market, but there are also difficulties on legislation. One of such problems is due to a legislative statement and the Labour Code that forces a law that was adopted more than 20 years ago, and it forces certain mechanism of compensation and warranties given to the citizens living and working in the Northern Territories. There is a special coefficient and a percentage markup for working in the far north. The compensation of transportation cost to the place of vacation, reduced labor work for women, that is just 36 working hours for women, but it is paid to the same amount as a full working week. There is also additional vacation days for working in the far north, additional days off for one of the parents who have children aged less than 16, and also additional guarantees and insurance provided to employees who are made redundant because the company is being liquidated. The thing is that all those warranties and compensations foreseen since 2040 are compensated by the employer. And as a result, there is additional burden for the entrepreneurs. Of course, it's one thing if this mechanism is used by highly profitable mining industries and businesses that use the resources offered by the region. It could even be seen as some kind of a rental tax, but it's completely different when the same burden is imposed on the shoulders of small and medium enterprises who produce products or services for local population and the domestic regional market. Normally, that type of costs are unbearable for them, and as a result, they either have to go into the shadow economy segment or they simply are not willing to comply with the legislation. We also see that the actual cost of production of products and services is increasing, and therefore the wrong impetuses are created. Like I said before, in order to have some kind of economic motivation to evolve, companies are either trying to avoid taxes or go into the shadow economy segment. As a result, I would say that this mechanism is clearly outdated and it cannot work in the condition of the market economy. It does not create the right environment for development of small and medium-sized enterprises. Therefore, we believe the time is right to make some legislative changes and offer compensations from the federal budget to compensate for those expenses for small and medium-sized enterprises, or we could make use of the foreign experience, something that exists in the Alaska state in the United States, where the population is receiving some dividends from the operation of the mining companies and oil and gas companies operating in the region. That is not the only problem that the enterprises of the Arctic are facing. Already today, there is a need to review the federal legislation that I made references to before. There is a clear requirement in this legislation to make sure that entrepreneurs operating in the Arctic zone do not have any separate subsidiaries or branches outside of the Arctic zone. Generally, we believe it is necessary to create the systemic legislative foundation that would create favorable conditions for investment and doing business in the Arctic. This is something that gives us optimism for further cooperation on the interparliamentary level within the Arctic region and outside of it in order to create the right legislation base for development of the far north. Namely, the State Committee of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation has a working group on enhancement of the legislation on the development of the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation. In the Northern Forum, the Federal Assembly of Yakutia has also created a working group on the development of the interparliamentary cooperation. And by the way, the Legislative Duma of the Khabarovsk region is an active participant of this working group. We believe that such institution give a platform for exchange of opinions and development of best practices, development of shared approaches, and this is something that contributes to development of the right legislation for the Arctic region. And we only hope that that type of platform also expand on the international level. We have experiences to share, and we have certainly a lot to learn from foreign colleagues. I have already mentioned the so-called dividend systems applied on the state of Alaska. We do believe that interaction between the members of parliament and the international level is helpful, and it does take place. For example, the Euro-Arctic Barents Council is conducting a parliamentary conference on a bilateral basis. Up to 2016, we've seen that there were also some conferences of the members of parliament of the Arctic region, but those are not regular bodies. And we see that there are clear prerequisites for further development of cooperation of the Arctic regions with the state of Alaska under the so-called Bering Pacific and the Arctic region. And we believe that type of working group could be truly helpful on the level of the interparliamentary cooperation. I thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you very much, Mr. Voronenko. And like I said before, we will have a Q&A session later. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat of this Zoom session. And now I'd like to have the next presentation, actually the last one for this session. And the next presenter is a lecturer at Heilongjiang Oriental University, the People's Republic of China. That's Yan Zhao. And the topic of the presentation is research on the participation of the northeastern region of China in the joint development of the Northern Sea route between Russia and China. Mr. Yan Zhao, the floor is yours. So, dear participants, good afternoon. Today, I will talk about the research on the participation of the northeastern region of China in the joint development of the Northern Sea route between Russia and China. But please tell us when we need to switch the slide. Yeah, please go over to the next slide. So I wanted to talk about the strategy. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about the strategy of recovery of the old industrial bases at the northeast of China that has been in existence for decades. In the course of the economic development of the northeastern region, we received some feasible economic results. However, over the last years, the tempos of economic growth have slowed down. The low level of commercialization and the massive brain drain is one of the key reasons of decreased economic growth in the northeastern region. In 2017, China and Russia have officially came up with an initiative of the joint creation of the Ice Silk Road that is opening up new opportunities for development of the northeastern region of China. From the geographical viewpoint, the northeastern region of China is closer to the Ice Silk Road. And thanks to the successful connection of the on-land and maritime transport with the help of the Ice Silk Road, the northeastern region will open up new opportunities for development and will help us define the new model of openness and external openness of China. Without exaggeration, it is fair to say that the Arctic region is of strategic importance for the development of the country, and resolution of a whole number of long-term objectives of the country's development is closely related to the process of the Arctic development. That was something that the former Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Prime Minister Medvedev, officially stated. So the new round of the Russian activity of an exploration of Arctic includes development and creation of the right legislative system for Arctic development, as well as development of the Arctic resources through the enterprises, and of course that includes development of the Northern Sea route.
Well, the Northern Sea route is the main sea transportation route which connects the eastern and western regions of Russia and the axis of comprehensive transportation network of Russia in the Arctic region, which is quite promising for domestic and transborder shipments of high strategic importance from the point of view of the economy, security, and research. And it is a priority for many Russian territories. Russia can also conduct comprehensive efforts to develop the NSR to revive this route. Thanks to the rich resources and the easy access to maritime routes and the special geographic position in the Arctic, Russia has for many years been a key region that needs to be developed. The Russian Northern Sea route is a well-established maritime route in the very heart of the Arctic and is an important part of the northeastern passage and a priority for the regional development of Russia. Currently, Russia is working to develop the Northern Sea route as a key maritime transportation corridor between the eastern and the western ports of Russia, and as an axis of the integrated transportation network in the Arctic. Russia is also looking to make the Northern Sea route an important Eurasian route in the Arctic, and to make it and turn it into an economically feasible, comfortable, and accessible and safe international sea transportation route for domestic and transborder freight shipments. The industrial development in the northeastern region of China has a long history and a solid foundation. It is also the cradle of economic development of China. However, as we go further with our reforms and openness, the economic development of the northeastern region is gradually lagging behind the eastern coastal provinces of China. In October 2003, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the State Council of China published a number of criticisms on the strategy of revival of the old industrial bases, such as the northeastern region. So, on a national level, this is the document which calls for the accelerated development and comprehensive revival of the northeastern district and region of China. In May of 2017, the General Secretary, Mr. Xi Jinping, during his visit to Heilongjiang province, stated that the revival of the old industrial regions of northeast is an important strategy of the state. And at the 19th Congress of the Communist Party of China, it was clearly stated that we need to deepen the reforms and accelerate the revival and upgrades of those old industrial regions. As of today, despite the certain difficulties in the development of the northeastern region, we do have big preferences in terms of its geography, industrial infrastructure, and transportation. If such advantages would be put to use, then the northeastern region may connect better with the Silk Road compared to the other regions of the country, which would also bring significant synergy. Geographically, the northeastern region of China is in the middle of northeastern Asia and is the closest from the Arctic compared to other regions of China. In particular, the provinces of Heilongjiang and Jilin border on the far eastern region of Russia. These Chinese provinces have some advantages in terms of their exchange and cooperation with the local transportation and customs authorities of Russia. Through the development of the land and maritime shipments, so we can comfortably deliver cargoes to the ports of the Japanese sea coast and then onwards to Western Europe through the Silk Road. The coastal ports of the Liaoning province may directly connect to the Silk Road to really load and unload any ships in passing. The transportation distances would be the most important factor which affects the cost of shipment. And this is the natural advantage of the Northeast that may increase the competitiveness of the regional businesses. In conclusion, I should say that the consensus reached between Russia and China on the Silk Road project may be the specific aspect of the broader initiative of One Belt, One Road that would engage also the northern region and the Arctic. the revival and the modernization of the old industrial centers in the northeast of China and the construction of the Silk Road would resonate with the same idea and would be important tools in creating a new space for international exchange and cooperation. The northeastern region of China can firmly grab the opportunities for development and also define their own position of development, clarify the destinations of such development projects, and consolidate international trade and commerce to build a new model of harmonic development and win-win cooperation in the Northeastern Asia, to integrate the development of the northeastern province of China into economic global development, and finally, in the end of the day, ensure industrial transformation and modernization and economic revival of the northeastern part of China. Thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you, Mr. Zhao, for your interesting presentation. Well, and perhaps I can now call the end of our second session. Well, dear friends, indeed, we had a challenge, an unpleasant one, which we will be able to overcome in future. Paul Fuss was actually flying from Iceland today, but unfortunately his flight was delayed, and so he was not able to connect to this conference on time. Perhaps we will take this into account, and perhaps we can have a separate event with Paul Fuss, or we for sure would really put his presentation on our website, because his presentation was supposed to be quite interesting. Now we are coming to discuss the outcomes of the second session, and by tradition, I perhaps would give the floor now in this conference room for their questions, if they have any, and if not, so then we can come to the Q&A. Well, maybe Marina, you can take the floor now and lead the Q&A and maybe read those questions that we received in the chat.
I will read out the questions. First is from Jawahar Bhagwat. Did I misspell your name? To Peking. Thank you for your interesting lecture. Could you please indicate whether Russia has offered any projects for cooperation along the Northern Sea route, notwithstanding public announcements by President Putin? In my opinion, two issues are of importance. Firstly, Russia's security concerns for the Northern Sea route, as they view it as a national route and as perhaps meaning the Russian government. Secondly, they have issues regarding issue of ownership of infrastructure assets offered for cooperation. View skepticism of China's term for projects along the
One Belt, One Road.
Can you
One Belt, One Road. And what is the...
maybe the Northern Sea routes, right?
Yes.
And Maritime Silk Road.
Maritime Silk Road, I'm sorry. So could you please comment on these aspects? Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good question. I think this question maybe is popular among our participants. And about the infrastructure, I don't know how to define this concept, the infrastructure. The Yamal LNG, this project, isn't one infrastructure. If so, I think it's very one successful sample or example, and could and jointly established by the both sides. This is one. About the ownership of the infrastructure, I think that depends on the negotiation between both sides. Surely China has a powerful ability to establish infrastructure. For example, in our country, the high-speed railway or a lot of the mega projects has been established successfully and running and managed successfully. And China have much experience, successful experience to establish and manage the infrastructure. China also is showing the enthusiasm, interest to participate in the infrastructure along the Northern Sea Route, such as the harbor. So I think about the ownership, I don't think it is one sensitive issue, topics. I think that depends the negotiation. I believe the Russian Federation and is active to attract the capital, including the public or private capital from China. So these issues is I think the Russian domestic law has already clarified ownership issues, I believe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Also, more question? Thank you. So if no question, could I, so dear Chair, could I put forward one question? No responding.
Do you have a question? Sorry.
Yes. So I want to ask our friends, the Russian friends, and what do you think about the Polar Cycle Route and or Arctic Route? So actually, this new term is co-initiated by the both presidents in 2017, but recently in the recent years, I see few research about the Polar Cycle Route. On the contrary, in the conference held a couple days ago, some scholars from the EU or from the EU, they are active to promote this concept, this term, Arctic route or Polar Cycle Route. What do you think? Some people, they are concerned. It seems is a proof of the Chinese ambition. So I want to know the comments from the Russian friends. Thanks.
Alexei, Елена. Кто-то будет?
Alexei, Елена, whoever can take this. Perhaps I may take this question, or maybe Alexei can complement and contribute. My view, can you hear me? Yeah. I hope you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you, Helena. Yes. Well, my opinion about why we do not have this breakthrough in the development of the Northern Sea Route as was announced and expected. First, you have some internal and external factors. Internally and domestically, we launched quite a number of mega projects, which in their sequence perhaps are a bit in disarray. And, you know, there's a lack of concentration on the mega projects might really interfere with the active development of the NSR project in terms of constructing the infrastructure. Plus, of course, that's notorious economic crisis and the impact of the pandemic and sanctions, which all impede the accelerated development of the Northern Sea Route. And of course, today, the active growth of infrastructure is visible in the eastern part of the Arctic. And of course, there is also some development of the port of Anadyr and the Bering ports, but maybe not to the maximum. So if there's a shift of priorities in terms of really developing the NSR, maybe to the detriment of some other mega projects that are going on, then it may accelerate the implementation of the NSR project. Thank you. Thank you, Yelena. Maybe we have some other questions, or do we need to wrap up? I don't know. We still have two more questions. Perhaps I will read those. Perhaps we will not have time to have very detailed answers to those questions. Rather, I would read those questions, and perhaps later the the panelists would be able to provide answers in writing to those questions. Two questions there from Yana Kazakova. And the first question, as far as I understand, the first question goes to Mr. Guo Peking. And the question is whether you have any do you see whether any competition between China and Korea in the joint development of the NSR in the conditions of this global political environment? And the second question goes to the second panelist, Lin Zhao. And do you have the second question? I'm sorry, I copied it, and perhaps I'll try to read that. And again, that question was initially addressed to Mr. Yin Zhao. So that was just one question. It was not two questions, but just one question over to Mr. Yin Zhao. But we have to really wrap up our second session. So perhaps, Mr. Yin Zhao, will you be able to answer, to provide an answer in writing? I hope that you can see this in the chat room. Maybe you can send an answer in writing, or maybe you can send that. You can do this now, or you can send it later to myself or Alexei. And thank you, Alexei. Would you agree? Yes, I will give you the floor like in a couple of seconds for a wrap up. And friends, we are coming to the end of our conference. I would like to thank all the participants of this event and the guests and for their presentations and contributions. And of course, I would like to thank our interpreters as well. And also wholeheartedly, I would like to thank our co-organizers, Marina Lovaeva and Juha Saunavara. Perhaps they made this event quite interesting. Our center will continue to be ready to cooperate. And if you have any suggestions, please contact myself. You have my contacts in the contact list. Now I'd like to give the floor to Marina and Juha for the concluding remarks of our conference.
So, dear participants, I would like to use this opportunity to thank all of you for contributing to today's event. We have talked about international and interregional cooperation involving a great variety of actors from the Russian Arctic and Far East, from different parts of the East Asia, and there was also this plan to have a representation from Alaska. Again, while today's event has emphasized the involvement of actors with various backgrounds, it has also demonstrated the great number of different actors who are interested in questions concerning the development of the Russian Arctic and Far East. And today's event has also strengthened my understanding that although they cannot replace the field research, for example, online platforms that we have learned to use because of COVID-19, they can help us in many different ways. Saying something from our Japanese perspective, when I think the future of Japanese-Russian academic cooperation in the study of Arctic and North, I see some good reasons to be optimistic. We have, this long-term cooperation between individual researchers and research groups representing different disciplines. We also have institutional ties between Japanese and Russian universities and other relevant stakeholders. And we have an increasing interest in the Arctic-related matters in Japan. That takes form, for example, in the ARX2 project that has been mentioned today. Again, this ARX2 program consists of the International Research Exchange Program, and ARX2 also has the Overseas Fellowship Program that we should utilize also when strengthening the ties between Japanese and Russian researchers and institutions. At the same time, we need to take into consideration a few points. Even if we talk about cooperation between Japanese and Russian academic communities that involve a great number of talented scholars, there often are some key persons who play a crucial role. When these key persons, for example, retire, there's always a risk that the institutional memory is not as strong as we thought it might be. Therefore, according to my own opinion, it's important to make sure that we educate young scholars who have experience and capabilities to continue the work of their predecessors. And a second important point is that we have relied on programs such as RTE3 and HARP supporting the cooperation between Japan and Russia. And typically, these kinds of projects, they have beginning and they have the end, or at least the shape and functions of these kinds of projects may shift a bit when the grant funding period ends. So therefore, it's important that that networks, trust building mechanisms, and concrete projects that we have built through these projects are incorporated in our daily activities, and then so that we do not lose what has been achieved at the end of the fixed period of project. So, and I think what could be the take-home message from my side? So I'm not sure whether I dare to say that international and interregional cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region is the engine for the development of the Russian Far East and the Asian Arctic area. In other words, I'm not in a position to say that the desired development will happen if there is cooperation, or won't happen if there is no cooperation. However, what I'm ready to say after listening to today's discussion is that the chances of development are much better if there is cooperation over the national borders involving both private and public actors and stakeholders. So that's from me. Marina may say some words.
Just a couple of words. As Juha already said, the speakers gathered here today represent the geographical region that may be described as the Pacific Arctic, including Russia, China, Japan, and Korea on the west, the Asian Arctic, and the United States and Canada on the east. So some of the visionary politicians and scholars have already recognized the high potential of the interregional cross-border cooperation in this area, particularly the bottom-up variety initiated and driven by non-state actors. Future steps in this direction may draw on the positive experience of such bilateral endeavors and initiatives as the Shared Beringian Heritage Program or the Bering Pacific Arctic Council and multilateral forums such as the Northern Forum. Hopefully expand their orbit to include the Northeast Asia countries, or at least allow to create associated programs or platforms facilitating participation from these countries, in particular the border regions. As an international and human exchange coordinator for the Arctic Challenge for Sustainability 2 project, I also hope that students and early career researchers and professionals will be given an opportunity to join such programs and platforms and inject their new energy and ideas into these processes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you from Japan and support.
Alexei, we're giving the floor back to you. Thank you so much. Спасибо большое переводчикам, без которых
Thank you very
сегодня...
much to our interpreters. Without them, our conference would not have been possible. We received a top-notch interpretation today. Thank you very much, dear guests, participants, delegates. Now we have had all our presentations, all the words have been said. Thank you very much for participation. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us for these 3 hours. All the best to you. And we'll keep in touch. Goodbye.